In just 47 seconds, $8.4 million in missing DOJ funds. Pam Bondi didn't expect the documents. Kash Patel didn't anticipate the whistleblower. Cameras captured everything. The chamber erupted in chaos. What did Sheldon Whitehouse reveal that made two of Trump's most trusted appointees contradict themselves, live on national television? At exactly 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, the Hart Senate office building buzzed with anticipation. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse walked into the hearing room like a prosecutor who had spent sleepless nights preparing. His Navy suit was pressed to perfection, classified documents clutched in his hands, and behind his glasses, his eyes held the intensity of a man who had uncovered something explosive. Across the mahogany table sat Pam Bondi, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a conservative black blazer with an American flag pin gleaming under the lights. Next to her, Kash Patel adjusted his red tie nervously, his FBI credentials folder trembling as he arranged his talking points. Both wore the confident smirks of political veterans who believed they had survived worse. The C-SPAN cameras rolled as Chairman Dick Durbin called the hearing to order. "We're here today to examine the Department of Justice's budget allocations," he announced. Behind the witnesses, reporters leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Whitehouse cleared his throat and began with deceptive calm. "Ms. Bondi, Mr. Patel, thank you for appearing today. I want to start with a simple question about DOJ expenditures." Bondi smiled confidently. "Senator, I'm happy to address any concerns about fiscal responsibility." "Excellent," Whitehouse replied, opening his first folder. "Then you can explain this." He held up a classified memorandum. Internal Audit Report 2024 Q4, dated December 15th. "Are you familiar with this document?" Patel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Senator, without seeing the specific—" "Mr. Patel, I'm asking Miss Bondi." Whitehouse's interruption was swift and sharp. The room fell silent for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity. Bondi's face remained composed, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her briefing folder. "I would need to review the document in question to provide accurate testimony." "Of course." Whitehouse's smile was predatory. Page 17, subsection C. It details $8.4 million in unaccounted expenditures from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, money that disappeared between October and December 2024 when Mr. Patel was serving as interim director. The chamber buzzed with whispers. Fox News correspondent John Roberts frantically scribbled notes, while CNN's camera operators adjusted their angles to capture every micro-expression. Patel leaned into his microphone. "Senator Whitehouse, those funds were allocated for classified operations that I cannot discuss in an open hearing." "Classified operations?" Whitehouse's eyebrows arched dangerously. "Mr. Patel, are you telling this committee that $8.4 million vanished into thin air for operations so secret that even the DOJ's internal auditors couldn't track them?" "That's not what I said." "Then, what are you saying?" The interruption came like a judicial hammer. "Because according to this audit, signed by Inspector General Michael Horowitz himself, there is no documentation, no approval chain, and no oversight for these expenditures." Bondi attempted to regain control. "Senator, Mr. Patel and I are committed to transparency within the bounds of national security." "Miss Bondi," Whitehouse's voice cut through her deflection like a scalpel, "were you aware that these missing funds coincided exactly with private security contracts awarded to Kash Foundation subsidiaries?" The blood drained from Patel's face so rapidly that even the C-SPAN cameras caught it. His hands trembled as he reached for his water glass, knocking over his pen in the process. "The Kash Foundation operates independently." "Independently?" Whitehouse pulled out a second document. "Bank records show 3 wire transfers totaling $8.4 million from DOJ accounts to Patriot Security Solutions, a company founded by your brother Kash Patel in November 2024. Care to explain that coincidence? The chamber exploded. Gasps rippled through the gallery as reporters realized they were witnessing a real-time political execution. Even seasoned Senate staff members stopped their note-taking to stare at the unfolding drama. Chairman Durbin banged his gavel. "Order! We will have order!" Bondi's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. "Senator Whitehouse, these accusations are completely unfounded. Mr. Patel has served this nation with distinction." "Miss Bondi." Whitehouse's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "Are you committing perjury to protect a nominee who embezzled federal funds?" Objection. Senator Lindsey Graham jumped to his feet. "The witness is not on trial here, isn't she?" Whitehouse never broke eye contact with Bondi. "Ms. Bondi, as Attorney General nominee, you swore to tell this committee the truth. Did you know about these transfers when you accepted the nomination?" Bondi's hands shook as she shuffled through her briefing papers. The vetting process was thorough." "That's not an answer." Whitehouse placed a third document on the table. "Your phone records show 17 calls with Kash Patel between December 20th and January 15th. What were you discussing?" Patel finally snapped. "Senator, this is a witch hunt. These records were obtained illegally." "Mr. Patel." Whitehouse's interruption was deadly quiet. "Are you suggesting that FBI phone records obtained through a federal warrant are illegal because that warrant was signed by a Trump-appointed judge based on evidence of financial crimes?" The room fell silent except for the clicking of camera shutters and the scratch of pens on paper. Social media exploded as clips of Patel's breakdown began trending worldwide. Patel perjury shot to #1 on Twitter within minutes. Bondi made one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Senators, I believe there's been a summer-ding about the nature of these expenditures." "Miss Bondi." Whitehouse opened his final folder with theatrical precision. "There's no misunderstanding about this." He held up a handwritten note. "Your personal letterhead dated January 8th, 2025. I quote, 'Kash, the audit trail needs to disappear before confirmation. Can your people handle the digital scrub?'" The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Every person in the chamber understood they had just witnessed the end of 2 political careers. Bondi's face went ashen while Patel stared at the table, his FBI credentials folder forgotten and crumpled. CNN broke into regular programming. Fox News anchors struggled to spin the revelation. MSNBC called it the most devastating congressional testimony since Watergate. Chairman Durbin's voice barely maintained its composure. "This hearing is adjourned pending a full investigation by the Senate Ethics Committee and the FBI." As senators filed out, Whitehouse gathered his documents with the methodical precision of a surgeon cleaning up after a successful operation. He had spent 3 months building this case, following financial breadcrumbs through a maze of shell companies and encrypted communications. The hallway outside erupted with reporters shouting questions. "Senator Whitehouse, how long have you known about these payments? Will you call for criminal charges? Is this bigger than just Patel and Bondi?" Whitehouse paused at the elevator, his expression unreadable. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a subpoena or a gavel. It's patience, preparation, and an unshakable commitment to the truth. As reporters shouted follow-up questions, Whitehouse's chief of staff whispered urgently in his ear, "Senator, we just received word that Attorney General Garland is calling an emergency press conference in 30 minutes. The implications were staggering. If Garland was moving this fast, it meant the Justice Department had been building its own parallel investigation." The elevator descended in tense silence. each floor marking another step toward what would become the most consequential political scandal of the decade. White House's phone buzzed again, this time with a text from his wife, watching on C-SPAN, "Proud of you. Stay safe." The reminder of personal stakes grounded him. This wasn't just about political theater anymore. Real people's lives hung in the balance. Meanwhile, in a basement conference room at the Trump International Hotel, an emergency damage control meeting was already underway. Campaign strategists, legal advisors, and crisis management specialists huddled around laptops showing plummeting approval ratings and devastating social media metrics. The hashtag Trump corruption was spreading faster than they could contain it. "We need a distraction," someone suggested desperately. Something big enough to change the news cycle. But there would be no escaping this scandal. By evening, 3 major newspapers would have teams of investigative reporters working through the night, following money trails that led to the highest levels of government. The elevator doors closed on one of the most explosive political moments in modern American history. But the story was far from over. At exactly 4:23 p.m., just 2 hours after the hearing's explosive conclusion, White House's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Senator, there's more. The Cayman accounts. Check your secure email." Back in his office, surrounded by law books and decades of political memorabilia, Whitehouse opened his laptop with trembling hands. The encrypted files that appeared on his screen made the $8.4 million look like pocket change. Bank records from Grand Cayman showed a web of offshore accounts totaling $47 million, all traced back to a network of companies controlled by Patel's associates. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his decades of political composure finally cracking. The documents revealed payments to 17 different shell companies, each one linked to prominent Trump administration officials. This wasn't just about Patel and Bondi anymore. This was a systematic looting of federal agencies. Meanwhile, across town in a luxury hotel suite, Patel paced frantically while barking orders into his phone. "I don't care what it costs. Those servers need to be wiped tonight." His face was flushed with panic, sweat staining his shirt collar. Through the windows, he could see the lights of Washington flickering, each one representing a potential witness. Bondi sat motionless in a leather chair, staring at her phone as resignation statements drafted by her legal team filled the screen. The woman who had once prosecuted complex fraud cases in Florida now found herself on the wrong side of the law. She had spent her career defending. Her hands shook as she deleted and retyped the same sentence over and over. "I regret any appearance of impropriety." At 6:45 p.m., CNN's Wolf Blitzer broke the developing story to millions of viewers. "We're getting reports that FBI agents have raided offices connected to Kash Patel's foundation in Virginia. Sources tell us this is connected to today's explosive Senate hearing testimony." The raids were swift and coordinated. Federal agents in tactical gear descended on 3 locations simultaneously: the Kash Foundation headquarters in Alexandria, Patriot Security Solutions offices in Arlington, and a storage facility in Fairfax where digital records were allegedly hidden. The imagery of FBI agents carrying out boxes of evidence became the defining visual of the scandal. Social media exploded with reactions. White House hero trended alongside Patelgate. Political commentators who had dismissed Whitehouse now praised his investigation. Late-night comedians prepared monologues that would dominate the news cycle. By midnight, political casualties began mounting. 3 Trump transition team members resigned. A prominent conservative think tank quietly removed Patel from its advisory board. Republican senators who had defended the nominees suddenly became unavailable. In a secure conference room at FBI headquarters, Director Christopher Wray convened an emergency meeting with his trusted agents. The irony wasn't lost. They were investigating the man nominated to replace Ray himself. This investigation will be conducted by the book, Ray declared. No politics, just facts. The following morning brought fresh revelations. The Washington Post published a bombshell investigation, revealing that the missing DOJ funds had been used to purchase sophisticated surveillance equipment, much of it allegedly used to monitor Trump's political enemies. The story painted a picture of a shadow intelligence operation operating outside traditional oversight. White House's phone rang constantly, with calls from fellow senators, journalists, and federal prosecutors. Each conversation revealed new threads to pull, new connections to investigate. The man who had started the day focused on a single budget discrepancy now found himself at the center of what legal experts were calling the biggest corruption scandal since Watergate. Within hours, both nominations would be withdrawn. Within days, federal prosecutors would open criminal investigations. And within weeks, the scandal would claim additional casualties throughout Trump's inner circle. In the quiet aftermath, as custodial staff cleaned up the debris of 2 destroyed careers, a single question strode through the heart building: what happens when those who claim to defend justice become its greatest threat? The answer would reshape American politics for years to come.